The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger was a very interesting read for me. The story details Holden Caulfield's adolescent experiences after being expelled from his prep school and his adventures of coming of age, which detail a lot of his views on society. Holden is a figure that feels alienated from the outside world because of his many quirks and how strongly he feels about how society is looking down on him. Rather than a continuous story-driven novel, it seems more like a large personal anecdote, as the story only progresses through about 2 days of Holden's life and is extremely informal by novel standards. For example, he ends the book by saying, "I don't want to talk about what happened next." Something that caught my attention was the frequent use of repetition when Holden was trying to explain how he feels, like when he says, "I really do," after explaining what is on his mind. Examples of this are, "Girls, they drive you crazy, they really do," or "He'd probably take it off and give it to you. He really would." It creates what I would describe as this kind of informal-esque feel, and it makes it feel much less like you're reading a book about his life, but more like you're having a genuine conversation with him yourself about it. And through this almost oral storytelling method, he makes the book more engaging and personable, and more enjoyable in that way. It gives perspective on what kind of person Holden actually is, and without it I feel like I wouldn't really care about his adolescent experiences, since, he is a complete stranger to me. Another thing that I paid extra attention to is the quote, "I'd just be the catcher in the rye and all. I know it's crazy, but that's the only thing I'd really like to be. I know it's crazy." By saying this, I believe Holden is expressing that he is dissimilar to those who we would consider normal in society because of his longing to preserve his innocence in his adolescence, almost rejecting the idea of growing up in general. Throughout the story, it is made painfully obvious that Holden as a person is separate to the world around him in some way. He says to Mr. Spencer that he feels trapped on the other side of life. Instead of acknowledging that human interaction scares and confuses him and that the idea of adulthood terrifies him, he creates this ideology that adulthood is full of superficiality and hypocrisy, or what he calls phoniness. This is most emphasized in that quote, as he imagines childhood innocence as a field of rye that children play in, but gradually fall into adulthood as though it is the edge of a cliff. He says that he would like to save them by catching them when they make that fall. It's comparable to a poem by Robert Burns titled "Comin' Through the Rye," a text with a similar moral and name which alludes that the idea came from such text. For me personally, I cherish every moment I get to spend being young because I know I'll look back on those times later on in life. Though I do disagree with Holden's perspective, as I don't want to delay the inevitable change into adulthood like Holden does. I believe the total opposite. I hate being looked down upon, and being a teenager, it's something that kind of comes with the package. I feel as though a lot of adults are just kids that have lived longer and don't differ from me at all, so what even constitutes an adult other than age, and why is it that I feel so misunderstood in this society that claim to be so mature, and yet are so extremely apathetic of what people like me think or feel? The Catcher in the Rye is a very interesting read. The story is unlike anything else I've ever read in the way that it feels so personal. It's likely from the way the story is structured less formally and more like an anecdote than most novels. I recommend it to delinquent teenagers such as myself, as it seems to be the book's target audience.